All right, everybody. Hey, everybody. This is David Kurz. Thanks for tuning in again to the Veteran Wealth Podcast. This is episode 8 of this year so far, or I don't know why I even said of this year. This is episode 8 of this podcast. And we're super excited to get it going. I have another podcast. So if you guys follow me, you go to podcasts, you look up David Adam Kurz, you'll find both of them. I'm on like episode 200 and something over there. This one dawned on us because we found that the veteran community was looking for solid information from veterans on how to succeed after leaving the military. And so today I brought my friend Vanessa Noble with me, who's an amazing real estate professional, former Miss Alaska, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Still reigning.
Yeah, still reigning queen. That's awesome. And former United States Air Force, right?
Yes.
03, got out. Tell me a little bit about you. First of all, thanks for doing the show with me. Yeah, tell me a little bit about your military career. Tell me why you joined, what you did while you were in, and why you got out.
Yeah, so I was actually a military spouse for 7 years before I joined the military. I joined at the ripe age of 27.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was a bit older when I joined. So I had been a military spouse. I actually was a high school dropout. I ended up having my son at 20. So I got pregnant right at 19, where we grew up. As long as you were pregnant out of high school, you were doing good. So
yeah,
that was the culture in that day. And so we were a young military family, but I had always had a desire to be in the military. I think I was always a tomboy, so I was either going to be a cop or, that kind of a thing. And when I was 17, my family fell apart, and that's when I dropped out of high school. But I had really wanted to go to the Naval Academy, and I'd been recruited, and I had like almost a 4.0 GPA. And when I dropped out, my dreams kind of went down the toilet. But I remember 9/11 where I was, and I was working at a city. I was an admin at a city engineer's office, and I'll never forget. So, because we were in the municipality, we're watching the 9/11 happen. We were actually kind of held down because we were in a city government environment. And so anthrax was a big scare. And they were like, oh, don't open the mail and stuff. And what ended up happening was I just remember watching people jumping out of the buildings. And as they were jumping out of the buildings, I just realized I can't sit here and do nothing. I just can't sit here and push paper and do nothing. Like, this patriotism really rose up inside of me. And then, I had my first son at 20. And so I decided to, be a mom. And I continued my education as a military spouse. We ended up stationed in Alaska. And I gave up as a military spouse. I gave up my plan for getting my psych degree because we got moved, and I had to get my social science degree instead of my psych program. And I left a 6-figure job at 24 years old to PCS to Alaska. And, I just was really doing the military spouse thing. And when we got there, I met my ex-husband's old commander and on a field trip with my kids. And so I helped my ex-husband transfer to the Guard, and found myself an opportunity in the Guard as well. Although they originally hired me as an equal opportunity officer. I finished my degree in 07. And then in 08, I was hired with the Alaska Air National Guard, and finally swore in 09. And but they hired me as an EO officer. Of course, being from Alaska, I was your like quintessential Latina EO person. And when I went to my basic training, I came out, I went to my commander. I'm like, I am not doing EO. And he was like, what? So he was like, all right, then pick a job. And so I went and I interviewed a couple of places, and I ended up picking in the Intel career field. I wanted something as close to the fight as possible. I knew I wasn't going to fly. I was already too old. You have to get waivers once you pass 30. And you have to be in flight training at 30. And I was already like 20, almost 29 at that point. Right. And then, so I wasn't going to fly, and, SF was not an option at that time in that unit. And so, I went, for Intel. And we're a rescue package. So I worked with the rescue component. We have PJs, HH60s, and C130s. So I pipelined into a deployment. We went to a pretty awesome deployment in Southwest Afghanistan in the Helmand River Valley. I was at Camp Bastion. It was a pretty dynamic deployment where I got to work with, MARSOC and Rangers and really learned the combat environment. And as an Air Force officer, it was very unique in the sense that there's not a lot of, there's like almost no other jobs in the Air Force where you have to understand the tactical picture and the way the decision makers are affecting what's happening on the ground and be able, as the O, being able to be like, that's a dumb decision. Don't do that because these guys are here and that's how that's going to affect them. Right. So it was a very unique opportunity. And I think it really set me up the skill set in the Intel career field of researching of, that NATAS, having the tactical picture, and then having to see the big picture at the same time, really set me up for what I ended up doing next, which was real estate.
That's cool. And we're going to get into that for a minute. So before I get there, it's interesting that you were a military spouse and then became active duty military. So I think my first question is the saying true? The hardest job in the military is military spouse. Now that you play both sides of the coin.
Yeah. And I was an enlisted spouse, right? And then an officer. So I've kind of been in all quadrants. And so, my ex-husband was like a slick sleeve. We call it an E-nothing. I would say that the spouse is the least glorified role, right? I remember, and if you've not been in, you don't get it. Your perspective as a spouse, when you've never been in, you just don't get the injustice, the bullshit. Like, you're like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? You have rights. Yeah, you don't have rights, right? Like, I joked when I separated. I just separated in January 18th, so 11 years. But I just separated on Martin Luther King Day of this year. And I joked, I'm like, yay, I'm separating from the military and I get to pick my nail polish color. Like, you people like abuse your freedom of speech and talk shit in a way that like military service members won't even say the things you freaking people say. And you're here with your rights and I can't even choose a nail polish color. Seriously. Like, but I have my nose pierced. I'm doing that next.
So why'd you separate? What'd you get? Oh, that's pretty awesome. Go for it. I remember, coming out of the military, obviously I've got tattoos on forearms and I've got the huge beard. And, it's like the second you get out of the Marine Corps, I served 9 years. As soon as you get out of the Marine Corps, first thing you do is get tattoos outside of the sleeve length and grow a beard,
See, so that you have these. So I already
there you go. So why'd you get out?
Bureaucracy, it's a very bottlenecked career field in Intel, especially, and as you go up as an officer, there's just a little more bullshit to deal with. And, I've always, and even I think the biggest thing that even follows me professionally is that I don't bullshit anybody. I won't kiss anyone's ass. We're allowed to say that in this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a military podcast. We're cursing like a motherfucker on this.
Sorry. But I've been a no bullshit person from the beginning. And that in the Air Force, that burns me, because I'm like, you're not going to get me to placate you just because of a rank. Like, I think when you're in a tactical unit and people are gonna freaking die, like, you have to get like a bird up in 4 minutes and someone's bleeding out and you're like, you're not, you lose, you're like there to do a job. And so you don't have to, it's not about the rank. Like, the rank order falls appropriately, right? And so I think sometimes in garrison, people expect you to not be honest the higher up you get. And that's not, I'm
that's not you. All right,
Yeah.
cool. How was your transition to going back to becoming a civilian?
Well, I had been, so once I got off of my like my 4 years of being like full time, I the furlough hit in 2013.
Okay.
And so in 2013, when the furlough hit, a lot of the guard units started to lose their man hours, and I was a captain at that time, and I was in charge of a few programs, but I was really bored. I mean, you can't come off of a combat environment and then push like policy and act like you're okay. I hit some depression pretty hard, especially getting caught in Afghanistan 30 days after and going straight into the Alaska winter was rough. And I was just like, I'm not, if this is what like being in the Air Force feels like, I don't think I can do this, you
Right.
know? And so I decided I wasn't going to go full time into the intel career field because it wasn't deployment. I wanted to be deployed, honestly. And so I ended up going part-time, and and then I went into real estate. I went into real estate because I had already been there for 2 tours, like 2 tour lengths, right? Where all of my friends that had been stationed with us in 2006 were back
Mhm.
in 2013. So, in Alaska, we have like the 82nd Airborne. We have we have a F-22 squadron. We have a C-17 unit. And so those airframes and that particular Army unit only has about 5 bases across the country. So everybody rotates back.
Right.
And so when they were rotating back, they were asking me to help them find a house. And so I was literally doing searches for my friends and like going to showings for my friends and looking at their houses. And then I started and my mom was a realtor for she's still a licensed realtor in California, but she was a realtor for 10 years. My godmother was a realtor, but I never thought about becoming a realtor. To me, that was like a sales job. And I was
Yeah.
like, like no way. And it was like, that's the job like the prissy girls do when they want to like look cute, and I was not a
Yeah.
girl. But when I started to really go take the intel picture and understand like the same analytics I put in a combat environment, that I could look at the economics, that I could look at resale value, that I could look at the VA funding fee, that I could look at investments, that I could look at this picture for other veterans and teach them wealth building strategies. That's when I realized like, shit, I do things differently and I need to continue my profession for the sake of other service members.
In your profession in real estate, what would you say is the most important thing to you?
Well, I have the opportunity to watch the back of my fellow veterans. I went to a conference in my first year of real estate. I grew so fast that I was very overwhelmed. I also gave birth to my third child. He was so my first year in real estate, I found out I was pregnant the month after I got my real estate license. So I closed about $5 million of real estate in 5 months and gave birth to my son. The following year, I closed another $10 million in real estate, and I was exhausted. I had a brand new baby, right? Like I'm like, I didn't care that much about money. I didn't really like houses that much, and everybody was getting on my nerves at that point because I was just like, ah. And
Right.
I went to this seminar that my mentor invited me to. And it was like all these mega agents talking about their successes in real estate. And I'm like, whatever. But there was 3 people that they brought to the panel. That's the reason why I went. And one of them had 9 streams of income, 16 streams of income, and 11 streams of income. So they're telling all their strategies about how they grew their businesses, right? And over here, I'm like a Latina from the ghetto. So I got educated and I got out of the ghetto because of the military, but I don't know wealth building principles. Nobody teaches us that, especially veterans. So I'm in there in this panel watching these 3 men, of course, talk about their journey in real estate and how they acquired businesses and all this stuff. And at the end, somebody stood up and asked them a question. And he said, if you would have known what you know today 30 years ago, what would you have done differently? And Mike Brody said, I would have bought more real estate. And Mark Wise said, I would have bought more real estate. And the other guy, Bowman Kitty, he said, I would have bought more real estate. And I was kind of startled for a second because I'm like, I thought they were going to say like some astrophysics business concept that I was going to have to go study. Right. And so
Yeah.
I was like, really that simple? You just showed me all of your organization, hundreds of employees, and you would have bought more real estate. And so Mike Brody said, he said, do you know there is not another vehicle on the face of the planet that has created more wealth for human beings than U.S. real estate? And when he said that, I was like, the first words out of my mouth, in my mind, not out of my mouth, I didn't say it out loud, was fuck that.
Yeah.
I looked around at all of these civilians and I'm like, there is no better person to build wealth on this soil than those that lay their lives down for it. And they don't teach us how to do this. Nobody teaches us.
No, and you would think that this would be like, you know, I always joke in the Marine Corps, in order to become a E3, a Lance Corporal, you had to take Marine Corps education course or whatever, and it was called Math for Marines. And honestly, like it was like third grade math, right? I'll never forget this shit, you know. And
I'm sorry.
it's
this is like they treat you like dumb, right?
This is fucking true story, right? Math for Marines. 2 + 2 is, if I have 2 bombs and the commie has 2 bombs, how many bombs do we have? Like, and so when you start thinking about that stuff and you go, where's the investing stuff, right? Where's the, this is how you use your VA loan. Where's the, you know, this is how you get educated to buy property. My ex-wife
telling you to shut up and color, right?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. What motivated me big time was my ex-wife. She has an uncle that lives in California. This guy's like, I don't know how old he is now, but when I saw him, he was in his early 70s, and this cat looked 45. You know, and so I said, you know, I need to know what he's doing. What are you doing, right? Like, what vitamin are you on? His girlfriend was 45 at the time. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he says, well, you know, I ride bike twice a week. I'm in a club. We do like 50 miles every other day, this and that, blah, blah. I eat healthy. I go, okay, what do you do for work? He goes, I'm retired. I retired 30 years ago. And I started doing the math, and I started rolling back, and I was like, hold on a second. That's like you retired in your 40s. He said, well, he was in the Army for 10 years. And he said he was stationed in, I think he said like 6 or 7 different places. And I'm paraphrasing some of this stuff because this was years ago. He told me this, right? And he said when he got to his first duty station, he had somebody tell him, buy a house, use your VA loan and buy a house.
That's, you know, the best. That's like the only advice, but buy a house. Like even that is the basic.
Right. And but he bought a house, and then he got stationed somewhere else, and he rented that house out to another veteran or another active duty military Army person. And then he bought another house at the next duty station. He did it like 4 or 5 times. And then he said when he got out of the Army, he sold them all, and he bought himself a little 8-unit complex in Los Angeles.
Awesome.
Now, I want you to think about the years on this, right? I had this conversation with this man maybe 15, 20 years ago, something like that. I don't know. And go 40 years before that, how much do you think he got this 8-unit complex for in LA?
Like 80 grand, something, yeah.
And his hobby was cutting the grass around the building and cleaning it up and checking on the tenants. And like, that was his thing. Like this guy, that's what he would do because he's like, I got nothing else to do, you know?
Familiar, you know about active duty passive income, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I ended up having the opportunity because as I was teaching multifamily, like my opportunity to learn multifamily just came out of being in Alaska. Multifamily was huge. And so teaching veterans how to use their VA loan for multifamily is what I started doing in 2015. And everybody started to listen to me like all across the country when I would go to training events for realtors. And my biggest problem was they were looking at me like I was like Jesus, like I was saying like this new concept. And I'm thinking, like, you've been selling real estate for 30 years and this never occurred to you.
But the problem is that a lot of people run around bad mouthing the VA loan.
Right.
And you and I can both say it and state it and confirm it that the VA loan is probably the best loan on the planet, period, in the story.
On the planet. Absolutely. And it's like for the veterans, it is your most valuable, it's quantifiably you're the most valuable benefit that the military gives you if you use it properly. You know, and I want to say 11% of veterans use their VA loan. It's a shame. And a lot of times when veterans are in like high markets like this, like what we're in right now, it is harder to compete as a veteran, you know, in very competitive markets, but you just have to find your way. You have to find a good, you know, a realtor that knows the market well, that knows how to position you to really find the opportunities.
So I think we're giving a lot of people some direction here. You know, you're Vanessa Noble, you've got experience, you were active duty, you're a military spouse, you're a real estate professional now, you speak on stages, you know, you do all this stuff. You know, we're both running on similar paths here, right? And, you know, what's the number one piece of advice that you give to a veteran that's active duty, that just left the military, that's trying to figure out how to be a civilian, or similarly, somebody who's been out for a minute and still hasn't figured it out, still hasn't kind of turned the light switch on and said, you know what, I this is what I got to do, and I'm trained to do it, and I can be the best at it.
Yeah, I would say that you just said it, the light switch, changing your mindset. Mindset is everything. Everything. And don't get me wrong, some people have a natural entrepreneurial, like all the people that get in trouble in the military, they're the ones that color outside the lines and like tell you fucking me. Like those people are probably entrepreneurs. So if you found yourself like not wanting to play by the rules, probably an entrepreneur. You know, but if you actually are super orderly, you are an entrepreneur's best asset. So find a visionary and become their pillar, and get some 50% equity on their business, because entrepreneurs can't get their shit together usually. And so if you were a veteran that's like super tight-laced and really good at like watching the numbers and keeping shit straight, like then you need to find a visionary and become their rocket fuel. There's a book called Rocket Fuel. It's not the one by C Rock, it's by somebody else, but there's an entrepreneur, there's a visionary, and there's an integrator. And so in the military, you're going to have one of two skills. You're going to either be the visionary or you're going to be the integrator. And so you can find your place in the entrepreneurial space if you understand your role well, you understand your skill sets, and you learn how to be a good leader, which is honestly the biggest key to being a good leader, aside from being able to see a big vision, is actually being able to have emotional control.
Awesome.
Because emotional control leads to better listening, to better problem solving. And so you get to come up with the creative ideas for people.
It's funny. I talk to my team about this all the time, you know, and I tell them, I go, listen, you want to be a better communicator? Shut the fuck up.
And it's to control yourself. You're the inner rise up where you like want to, I mean, I'm a Latina, like, believe me, you want to choke someone a lot.
Yeah. The fire burns, baby. The fire burns.
Yeah.
Right,
but
so question for you. Are you the visionary or the implementer?
I can switch. Actually, I am more of the visionary. I'm more naturally creative. I have a lot of ideas all the time. But as an intel officer, I'm trained as an integrator, you know, so, but the officer part gets me a little bit, that's where I miss it, because I'm used to having like my enlisted like team to like help me get the work done, the like the data entry, the numbers. And so so I'm more of a visionary, but I tend to be, I can be an integrator if I have to, usually for someone else.
Yeah, I'm gonna touch base with you on that again soon, because I'm in the process of writing my third book, and I wanna steal some of that information from you, and even, you know, put you out there, shout you out in the book. I wrote a book called The Blueprint, you know, a guide to selling real estate, and then I realized that a lot of people read that book and do nothing with it. So I wrote another book called Take Action, which was a much better and more fun book. But the idea of, you know, you just said it, implementer or a visionary, the idea of switching them on and off are amazing, because it's very easy to be a visionary and be a broke ass visionary, right? And because you've got all these great ideas and you never implement any of them, you don't put them to action. So I wrote that book called Take Action, and I mean, I literally give this thing away. Like, people here, just read this, go do something, Yeah, and my wife jokes around. She's like, "You're the king of take action, because you go from idea to take action in 6 seconds. We don't even think about it or have a conversation over dinner about it."
Yeah,
And I'm like,
that's Grant Cardone's way. That's Grant Cardone's way.
yeah,
Right?
just got to get it done.
Get it done. Get it done.
Yep.
Yeah, in active duty passive income, we have a course called Action Takers Only. And so it's a mastermind, and we teach them how to get into multifamily syndication. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It's called Action Takers Only. Yeah.
All right. Well, if people want to follow you on Instagram or anywhere else, how can they find you?
The best thing to do is to search my name, Vanessa Noble. Right now my Instagram handle is Miss Alaska for America, with periods in between the names, but probably after in August I'm going to transfer my reign, and I probably will change my handle. Usually it's Vanessa Lauren. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you doing the show with us. Lots of great information, good knowledge we dropped on our vets out there. And believe it or not, we have a lot of people that are not veterans that watch that are, I get messages, "Hey, I just watched the show, amazing." And I think, it's a beautiful thing to not only be able to impact our veterans, but impact the entire community, so that the entire community can also know what to do and who they're dealing with when working with veterans. So, greatly appreciated jumping on this with me and making this happen. And I look forward to doing it again sometime. Like I said, I'm going to hit you up and pick your brain for my book.
Yeah, next time on mindset, I would love to share with veterans about getting out of that shut up and color mindset that
let's do it.
Indoctrinated, so you can't, I always say, it's the soda straw mentality. 3 years I'm stationed here to get the mission done, and you have a hard time looking up.
Yep. Yep. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you share it with your friends. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. And check out the podcast. Listen to it in your car, in your home. Share it with your kids. Have them listen to it. Make them join the military. Straighten them out. Talk to y'all soon.
Bye.